Have you ever stood at the edge of a great mystery, feeling the pull of a story so immense, so profound, that you know it holds the power to change everything you thought you knew? What if I told you that the wisest man who ever lived, a king whose name is synonymous with divine judgment and unparalleled wealth, harbored a secret world behind his palace walls, a world of breathtaking beauty, fierce ambition, and a power so dark it bordered on the supernatural, a world that ultimately led to the downfall of his magnificent kingdom. Tonight, we don't just recount history. We peel back the gilded layers of time to reveal the pulsating heart of King Solomon's court, a story of 1,000 women, legendary magic, and the shocking price of absolute power. Prepare yourself, because the conclusion of this journey will reveal a truth hidden for millennia, a truth that connects Solomon's fabled wisdom to forces that lie beyond our mortal understanding. Before we step through the gates of ancient Jerusalem, I want to know where you are on this journey with us. Drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're listening from and what time it is for you. Let's see how far this story reaches across the globe. Now take a deep breath and let us begin. Welcome to our channel. Have you ever truly tried to imagine the reality of life within the magnificent Temple of Solomon, a place of unparalleled majesty, profound mystery, and sacred wisdom? But what if I told you that beyond the hallowed sanctuary, behind the gleaming walls of the royal palace, there existed a secret world of breathtaking opulence, intoxicating allure, and a silent, ferocious power that shaped the destiny of an empire? This was the world of King Solomon, a ruler celebrated as the wisest in all of history. He did not merely govern a vast and prosperous kingdom, he orchestrated the intricate and often perilous balance of affections and needs among his 700 royal wives and 300 concubines. Can you truly grasp the scale of such a feat? How could one man possibly divide his time, his heart, and his authority among 1,000 women, each a queen in her own right, each a political linchpin, each a universe of desire and ambition? Every single day, within the sprawling, scented corridors of the royal harem, women embarked on an elaborate, ritualistic preparation for a potential night of intimacy with the king. This was not a simple act of beautification. It was a sacred, artistic, and deeply competitive performance. They would immerse themselves in baths filled with waters infused with the rarest and most exotic fragrances known to the ancient world. Their skin, silken and flawless, was massaged with precious essential oils like myrrh and aloes, substances worth more than their weight in gold. Their hair, a cascading river of night, was intricately braided with threads of pure spun gold, and their bodies were adorned with jewels meticulously designed not just to decorate but to captivate, to mesmerize, to enchant. The very air within these chambers seemed to hum with a potent energy, thick with the weight of mystique and laden with the intoxicating aroma of foreign perfumes. Each night, sacred rites and hypnotic dances unfolded, weaving a tapestry of sensuality and spiritual devotion. But to see this as a simple tale of passion and beauty would be to miss the profound truth at its core. This was a silent, relentless competition, a wordless, high-stakes war for Solomon's favor, where women vied not just for his fleeting attention, but for influence, for power, and for a place in the annals of history. This vast and complex harem operated under an energy that felt almost supernatural, a nexus of human emotion and divine politics. But what if this story signifies something far more profound than luxury and courtly intrigue? What if Solomon's reign was inextricably linked to something darker, something that transcends our worldly comprehension? You are about to uncover secrets that have been veiled by the sands of time for centuries. And hidden deep within this labyrinth of opulence and power lies a shocking truth. A truth about what Solomon truly controlled, held in check by the formidable power of his legendary, mystical ring. What was the true price of such unparalleled power and divine wisdom? Stay with me until the very end of this narrative. for this story promises to shatter everything you thought you knew about the greatest king in history. If you are ready to delve into the mysteries of Solomon's temple and uncover the secrets that have lain dormant for millennia, let us journey together into this extraordinary tale. How did King Solomon truly manage 1,000 wives? Imagine yourself transported back to the year 957 BC. The sun ascends over the holy city of Jerusalem, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, casting its light upon an almost unbelievable spectacle. There, standing majestically upon Mount Moriah, is an edifice unlike any other the world had ever seen, a marvel of architectural genius and sacred significance. Solomon's temple was not merely a building, it was the physical embodiment of faith, power, and the glorious destiny of a kingdom, constructed with resources valued in the billions of dollars by today's standards. Its brilliant golden walls shimmered as the first light of dawn struck them, casting a divine radiance across the land. This was more than a place of worship. It was a monumental declaration of Solomon's unmatched power and God's divine favor. For 7 consecutive years, a colossal workforce of over 180,000 men toiled relentlessly to bring this grand vision to life. From distant lands, immense caravans transported the finest cedar wood from Lebanon, a commodity of the highest quality in the ancient world, its rich scent a perfume for the gods themselves. Skilled Phoenician artisans, renowned for their unparalleled craftsmanship, meticulously carved every intricate detail of the temple with a precision that could almost be described as divine. The rhythmic clang of hammers and chisels echoed day and night. Massive blocks of stone were carefully shaped into works of art, demonstrating an engineering prowess that continues to baffle the modern mind. The temple was immense in its dimensions, measuring 98 feet in length, 33 feet in width, and 49 feet in height in its main sanctuary. But it was the interior that left every visitor breathless with awe. Every single surface glittered with pure, unadulterated gold, as if the very walls were saturated with celestial light. The scintillating gleam of the sacred metal allowed no eye to rest, perpetually overwhelmed by its constant holy luminescence. At the heart of the Holy of Holies stood massive cherubim, carved from olive wood and completely overlaid with gold, their colossal wings stretching out in solemn protection. The air within this chamber was thick with reverence, an atmosphere so saturated with holiness that it seemed to whisper of the divine presence. The court of the priests, a place of sacred activity, was paved with precious gemstones, each stone telling its own story, its own journey from a faraway land. At the entrance to the temple, 2 towering pillars, Jachin and Boaz, stood as sentinels, their massive forms symbolizing strength and stability. Adorned with bronze pomegranates and intricate chainwork, they represented the eternal might of Solomon's dynasty. But perhaps the most awe-inspiring element of the temple lay in its innermost sanctum, the Holy of Holies. This room, a perfect cube measuring 33 feet on each side, was the sacred resting place of the Ark of the Covenant. Only the high priest was permitted to enter this sacred space, and only once a year on the Day of Atonement, making it the most sacred ground in all existence. The chamber was filled with the fragrance of holy incense, which mingled with the fresh, clean scent of cedar, creating an unforgettable sensory experience for anyone who drew near this sacred sanctuary. To ensure the continuous, flawless operation of this holy place, Solomon established a remarkable system, a rotating cycle of 24 divisions of priests, each taking its turn to maintain the sacred duties of the temple. From replenishing the showbread every Sabbath to keeping the golden lamps lit day and night, the needs of the temple were met with meticulous precision and unwavering devotion. But this was only the beginning of Solomon's reign as a spiritual leader. As we journey deeper into Solomon's world, you will soon discover the secret powers he wielded, powers that extended far beyond conventional wisdom. The king, celebrated for his supernatural abilities, was said to command forces that could hold dark, demonic entities at bay. But that was not the only secret he kept. The palace itself held rituals known only to his 1,000 wives, rituals that masked the true depths of Solomon's spiritual influence. And beyond that, clandestine activities unfolded right within his own kingdom, far from the public eye. How did Solomon, the wisest king in history, truly control the supernatural? And what was the ultimate cost of wielding such power? Join us as we explore the layers of mystery and mysticism of Solomon's reign, where the divine and the occult intertwined, forging an empire that still echoes through history. As the first light of dawn broke, even before the sun's rays could touch the golden walls of Solomon's temple, a symphony of sounds filled the air, each note imbued with sacred purpose. The thunderous clang of the great bronze gates echoed through the holy halls, signaling the start of another day of sacred service in the temple. The Levites, organized into divisions with specific duties, moved with an almost military precision. Their devotion and discipline were evident in every measured step. The first act of the day was the ritual of purification, a sacred tradition as vital as the sacrifices themselves. Imagine hundreds of attendants moving in perfect rhythmic harmony. Some carried golden vessels, each filled with water drawn from a sacred spring, while others swept the courtyards with consecrated brooms, ensuring that every corner of the temple was prepared for the holy rites to come. The marble floors were so meticulously polished that it was said when you gazed into them, you saw not only your reflection but also your soul. The purity of the space beneath your feet mirrored the purity of your spirit. While the sacred preparations of the temple continued, the temple musicians, highly trained Levites who had dedicated their lives to their art, began to take their places in the courtyards. Their lyres, cymbals, and trumpets began to resonate, sending celestial melodies into the morning air. These were no ordinary tunes. Each song was selected according to the instructions of King David himself. Each melody was assigned to specific times of the day, invoking a spiritual atmosphere that could be felt far beyond the walls of Jerusalem, reaching, it was said, to the heavens themselves. Meanwhile, in the outer court, merchants offered animals for sacrifice. But this was no ordinary marketplace. Each animal was carefully inspected by the priests to ensure that only the unblemished were deemed worthy of being offered to God. Prices were carefully regulated so that even the poorest among the people could participate in the sacred rites. This was not just a market, it was a place where the divine and the mundane intersected, where every person, regardless of wealth, could draw closer to God. An ancient engineering marvel operated silently behind the scenes. An intricate system of aqueducts ensured a constant flow of fresh water into the temple. This water was not just for cleaning, it was essential for the purification rituals, a symbol of spiritual renewal. One of the most incredible features was the giant brazen sea, a massive bronze basin supported by 12 colossal bronze oxen. This reservoir of water was the priest's sacred tool, used for their ritual ablutions and the many other daily rites that ensured the temple remained a place of profound sanctity. Before any sacred service could begin, the priests themselves had to undergo a meticulous process of purification. They donned garments of fine white linen, stored in chambers dedicated solely to this holy purpose. Each garment was more than mere clothing. It was a symbol of sacred significance. Donning it in the proper order carried deep spiritual meaning. The preparation of the priest was not merely physical. Each vestment was an integral part of their spiritual alignment, a way of consecrating both their body and their spirit for the holy service they were about to perform. Beyond the massive structure of the temple, the bustling activity of a holy city was in full swing. Bakers, specially chosen for their skill and devotion, prepared the showbread in sacred ovens, following ancient recipes passed down through generations. The bread, considered a sacred offering, had to be made with the utmost reverence and care. Meanwhile, the perfumers were equally dedicated, blending the holy incense. The recipe for this incense was a closely guarded secret, protected as carefully as the temple's treasures themselves, and it would fill the air with a scent so sacred, it was said it could carry the people's prayers to God. Every aspect of the temple, from its sacred music to its intricate rituals, was part of a divine system designed to ensure that God's presence remained among the people of Israel. It was a place where holiness and the earthly world merged, a space that operated not just on the physical plane, but on the spiritual one as well, inviting all who entered to be transformed by its power. As the day began, every sound, every action, every prayer was part of a grander sacred symphony, reflecting the glory and magnificence of Solomon's temple, where God himself was worshipped and his people found themselves drawn ever closer to the divine through their devotion. But behind this sacred order, there were secrets, mysteries within mysteries that only the most discerning could fully comprehend. What rituals, what supernatural forces were at play in this most holy of places? What was the true cost of that power? The answers lie hidden beneath the layers of sanctity and divine power, to be revealed only to those who dare to look deeper. In this video, you will discover the hidden truth about Solomon's ability to master supernatural forces, using the power of a magical ring that gave him dominion over otherworldly beings. You will also uncover the forbidden rituals within his palace, the captivating practices that turned his harem into not just a place of pleasure, but a center of political power that could alter the course of history forever. What you are about to hear about the greatest king of antiquity, King Solomon, will unveil secrets few have dared to speak of. A story that weaves together power, desire, and consequences that continue to echo through the ages. Imagine a palace so vast it could comfortably house 1,000 women, each with her own private chambers, her own retinue of servants, and most importantly, her own sacred rituals. This was no mere collection of royal wives. It was a grand design of power and diplomacy. Solomon's harem was far more than a den of opulence and pleasure. It was the epicenter of political maneuvering, a place where alliances were forged, treaties were sealed, and the fates of entire nations were decided. Among these women, Solomon's 700 queens and 300 concubines were not just his companions, but his strategic partners, each representing a connection to a distant kingdom. These were unions forged not from love, but from the very lifeblood of politics and empire building. At the pinnacle of this intricate hierarchy of the harem stood the daughter of Pharaoh, her position the most prestigious of all. Her palace, an exquisite architectural statement, stood apart, lavishly adorned with Egyptian hieroglyphs and filled with treasures from the Nile. Her entourage consisted of hundreds of servants, dancers, and musicians from Egypt, all dedicated to upholding the grandeur of her station. Her gowns, woven from linen so fine it was said to be as transparent as water, symbolized not just her royal status, but her unique and unassailable power. As you explore this harem, you discover the influence of other women from distant lands. The Moabite princesses, renowned for their exotic scents and deep knowledge of aromatics. The Sidonian women, skilled in weaving the royal purple dye, a color reserved for the wealthiest and most powerful. This was a convergence of cultures, traditions, and beauties from across the ancient world. Solomon's harem became a living testament to the unity and diversity of his reign, blending the best traditions and innovations from the furthest reaches of his empire. This was not just a luxurious retreat, but a miniature kingdom in its own right, with its own complex hierarchy and protocols. The royal wives lived on the upper floors of the harem, in lavish suites overlooking fragrant gardens, living a life of splendor and magnificence. Below them, the concubines, though well cared for, resided in more modest quarters, Yet even on these lower levels, comfort was assured. Solomon spared no expense in caring for the well-being of his women. Each woman in the harem held a royal seal, a symbol of authority that allowed her to engage in business, maintain correspondence with her homeland, and uphold her kingdom's alliances. Scribes were assigned to meticulously record their names, lineage, dowries, exchanged gifts, and most importantly, the children born from these unions, ensuring that nothing was left to chance in the grand scheme of Solomon's political and dynastic endeavors. The management of the harem was so complex it could rival the operations of an empire. A veritable army of eunuchs, guards, cooks, musicians, doctors, and midwives supported the daily life of the harem. Everything was executed with a precision that mirrored the king's own exacting standards. Strict rules were enforced to maintain order. Daily routines were coordinated by messengers, often respected older women who were trusted with the task of managing communication and relationships between the different sections of the harem. But even in this highly ordered system, Solomon knew that power could be fleeting. To prevent alliances from forming behind his back, no wife was allowed to visit another without prior permission. This rule was not merely about maintaining harmony, it was a measure to prevent conspiracies, to limit the potential for dangerous factions to form, and to ensure that every decision made within the harem ultimately benefited Solomon. The world of Solomon was indeed complex and fascinating. Nothing was arbitrary. What you are about to discover in this story are the deepest secrets of Solomon's court, where beauty, power, and ambition merged in a perpetual, intoxicating festival. Each night within those walls was a unique and sacred ritual, a constant exchange of love, loyalty, and ambition. Solomon's harem was more than a place of carnal pleasure. It was the very pulse of his kingdom, a control center of destiny, and a testament to the king's ability to balance wisdom with the complexities of human nature. The rituals for a night with the king began at dawn. The chosen woman, her identity kept a closely guarded secret, would be informed by a whispered message from a royal eunuch. This set in motion a day-long ceremony, an intricate ritual that was as much an art form as it was a sacred tradition that few were ever able to witness in its entirety. First, she was escorted to the House of Purification, a building dedicated exclusively to this sacred beauty rite. This space was not merely a room, it was a sanctuary dedicated to preparing the woman for the king's presence. Inside, she would bathe in 7 different pools, each filled with water infused with specific aromatic essences, such as myrrh, aloes, cinnamon, and cassia, the scents of which had been passed down through generations of harem keepers. These oils were chosen for their ability to cleanse and purify, preparing both body and spirit for the king's presence. 7 personal handmaidens, each assigned a specific, intricate task, attended to her every need. Their soft hands washed her hair with rare essences, styling it with ivory combs inlaid with precious stones. Her skin was treated with a luxurious mixture of honey, goat's milk, and secret oils, an ancient formula so sacred that it was kept hidden within the inner echelons of the palace, protected by centuries of tradition. It was said that those who bathed in these oils were not just physically transformed, but spiritually imbued with an almost divine aura. Her nails were carefully manicured and painted with henna in intricate symbolic patterns. Each design told a story of love written in an ancient script known only to those within the palace. These symbols were not just for beauty, they were a language of seduction, telling tales of desire and devotion that echoed through the corridors of time. The garments for the night were chosen with equal care. Fabrics so fine they seemed to have been woven by the hands of gods, were dyed with pigments extracted from rare seashells and precious minerals. These were no ordinary clothes, they were works of art, crafted to evoke both beauty and power. Each garment was significant, designed to symbolize the woman's status and her allure in the king's eyes. Jewelry, too, played its part. More than mere adornment, each piece carried symbolic weight, representing her captivating beauty and strength. Necklaces, bracelets, and rings, each one set with precious stones that caught the light in a way that made them seem to glow with an inner fire, were carefully placed upon her. As the woman was prepared, the royal chamber was arranged with equal precision. Golden censers filled with aromatic resins spread a captivating fragrance throughout the room, a scent that was both sweet and intoxicating, filling the air. Fresh flower petals plucked from the palace gardens were scattered over silken sheets, creating a scene that was as peaceful as it was sensual. Small oil lamps, carefully arranged, cast a soft, flickering glow. Their light danced like whispers in the shadows, setting the perfect mood for what was to come. In adjoining rooms, musicians specially trained in the art of love songs positioned themselves discreetly, ready to play. Their harps and flutes would fill the air with gentle melodies, each note inspired by the Song of Songs, an ancient text as sweet as honey and filled with the promise of romance and mystery. These songs, both sacred and sensual, helped to elevate the moment, adding to the intimacy of the night. Before the woman was allowed to enter the king's chamber, she was instructed by experienced older women, wise matrons, who had dedicated their lives to passing down the secrets kept for generations on the art of love. Every gesture, every word, every movement was rehearsed and perfected, ensuring that the night would be an unforgettable one, a night where beauty and power merged with ancient wisdom. But what you are about to learn goes much deeper than rituals of beauty and love. Solomon, the wisest king to ever rule, held not only power over his harem, he had the ability to command unseen forces, supernatural powers that allowed him to command demons, master the elements, and protect his kingdom from spiritual threats. You will discover the secret rituals performed not just by his wives, but by Solomon himself in the secret chambers of his palace. The mysteries of his court went far beyond what anyone could see, beyond the glittering gold and the sacred ceremonies. What happened in the deepest corners of Solomon's palace was a world unto itself, where forbidden practices and mystical forces worked together to shape the destiny of a kingdom. Prepare for revelations that will challenge everything you think you know about the wisest king in history. The Song of Songs echoed through the corridors of Solomon's palace, its verses so rich with love and passion that they were elevated to the status of Holy Scripture. In these sacred lines, Solomon revealed a profound vision of love, one that transcended the physical, connecting the human to the divine. The love he described was not just a reflection of the heart's desires, but a mirror of divine affection, where earthly passion became a sacred expression of God's love for his people. The women who graced Solomon's harem were more than just companions. They were emissaries from distant lands, each carrying with them the deep, sensual traditions of their cultures. The Egyptian women, with their fluid, captivating movements, were masters of the art of belly dancing. They moved as if they were one with the earth, their bodies undulating like serpents, their dance an intoxicating ritual that could stir even the calmest of souls. The golden cymbals they played provided a backdrop to their movements, the sound as haunting and mesmerizing as the dance itself. The Phoenician women were alchemists of scent. Perfume was their magic. With skill and precision, they created intoxicating oils and fragrances that could captivate the senses, bewitching anyone who inhaled them. Their perfumes were not just scents. They were portals to another world, one filled with mystery, beauty, and deep longing. They could cast a spell with a single drop of their aromatic concoctions, making the very air thick with desire. The Moabite women, in contrast, were the heart of the harem's music. Their love songs, gentle yet powerful, carried melodies so pure they could melt the most hardened of hearts. Each note was a prayer, each word an offering of devotion. As they sang, time seemed to stand still, and all who heard them were caught in the powerful spell of their melodies. their voices a reminder of love's sweetest and most tender expressions. In the very heart of the palace, secret gardens flourished under the shade of pomegranate trees and grapevines, with winding paths and the gentle murmur of fountains providing a constant soundtrack. Here in this paradise, the women would gather not as rivals, but as a sisterhood, sharing their wisdom and their secrets. They taught one another ancient recipes for aphrodisiacs, made from aromatic herbs, passed down through generations, with the power to heal, to enchant, and to transform. Dancing was also part of their curriculum, with movements so hypnotic they could mesmerize anyone who watched. And of course, they shared the subtle arts of seduction, the charm of conversation, where every word and every glance had the power to move hearts and minds. Each woman brought her own unique perspective on beauty and pleasure, and in this harem, the fusion of cultures created a vibrant tapestry of sensuality and grace. The relationships between the women were as complex as the palace they inhabited, where each sought to master the arts of love and beauty in her own way, while learning from the others. Special musical instruments were crafted exclusively for the rituals of love, reserved only for the most intimate moments. Delicate harps with strings woven from silk threads produced sounds that whispered like gentle caresses. Drums, their rhythms deep and resonant, echoed through the night like the very heartbeat of the earth. Flutes, with their passionate soaring notes, played melodies that seemed to speak directly to the soul. Music was more than mere entertainment in Solomon's palace. It was a form of magic, a key that unlocked the deepest chambers of the heart, an instrument that could summon the sweetest and most powerful of emotions. But even as beauty and harmony filled the air, there was an undercurrent of rivalry, fierce, silent, and ever-present. Solomon, the wisest of kings, was the object of intense competition among the women of his harem. It was not an ordinary contest. It was a battle not just for affection, but a game of power, desire, and influence. Every gesture, every smile, every look was laden with meaning. What you are about to discover in Solomon's harem will unveil a world of intrigue, where the competition for the king's attention was about far more than love. It was about shaping the destiny of nations, influencing the king's decisions, and securing a place in the history of Israel. The women of the harem played a silent but powerful game. They knew that Solomon's favor was about more than beauty or grace. It was about influence, intelligence, and the ability to manipulate a sophisticated web of politics and desire. What seemed like a peaceful harem was, in reality, a complex and dangerous battlefield where the prize was nothing less than the future of the kingdom itself. In the vast and opulent harem of Solomon, every woman knew that the king's favor was the key to her power, and she would stop at nothing to win it. But capturing Solomon's eye was no simple task. Some women relied on their intellect, engaging in private discussions on matters of politics, philosophy, and governance, subtly impressing the king with their sharp minds and their ability to understand the complexities of his reign. These women knew that true influence came not just from beauty, but from the power of the mind. They skillfully wove themselves into conversations, offering solutions to the problems Solomon faced, and in doing so, they earned the king's trust. Others took a different path. They cultivated their artistic talents, composing poetry that touched the king's heart, crafting exotic perfumes that captivated his senses, or perfecting dances so graceful they seemed otherworldly. These performances were more than entertainment. They were a form of communication. Every gesture, every movement, every note of music carried a message of longing and devotion. Solomon, known for his discernment, understood that the language of art was as powerful as the spoken word. Yet behind this facade of beauty and grace, the competition was fierce and silent. It was a ruthless game where alliances were forged in the shadows. Women from different nations, each with her own culture, traditions, and power base, would secretly unite, creating networks of influence that extended far beyond the walls of the palace. A cunning concubine could quickly rise in status, gaining favor by aligning herself with more powerful royal wives who had access to the king's inner circle. These alliances were fragile and fluid, built on a delicate balance of mutual trust, ambition, and the ever-present hope of securing the king's favor. Even the eunuchs, often seen as mere servants, played a crucial role in this game of power. They were the silent observers, the ones who moved unseen through the corridors, carrying secret messages between the women, observing the king's movements and reporting back to their mistresses. A well-timed whisper, a strategically placed compliment, or a casual remark could change a woman's fortune. In the harem, the eunuchs were the eyes and ears of the palace, and their loyalty was as valuable as the loyalty of the women they served. The gifts exchanged between the women and the king, or among the women themselves, were laden with hidden meanings, subtle messages that spoke of power, affection, or desire. A cup of spiced wine offered at the right moment could be a signal of allegiance or a silent act of seduction. A poem inscribed on scented papyrus could convey feelings of love or rivalry, while a piece of jewelry engraved with cryptic symbols could represent a promise or a threat. These gifts were not just tokens, they were pieces of a secret language, one that only those who truly lived within the world of the harem could understand. The wisest women in the harem knew that beauty alone could not capture Solomon's heart or his power. They understood that to truly influence the king, they had to master more than just their appearance. They studied him, they watched his every move, learned his likes and dislikes, understood the challenges he faced in ruling his kingdom, and became attuned to his moods and habits. Some women even became informal advisors to the king, offering counsel in quiet, private moments when Solomon's guard was down. These women shaped decisions, influencing the course of events, not with loud proclamations, but with gentle whispers at the right time. But this silent manipulation came at a cost. As the women vied for power, the kingdom itself began to change. The children of Solomon, born from these alliances, would bear the consequences of this delicate balance of love and power. It was these very children who sowed the seeds of the kingdom's decline. As Solomon grew older, the web of influence and desire that had once held his rule firm began to unravel. The story of Solomon's heirs is one of ambition, betrayal, and a kingdom on the brink of collapse. The events that followed changed the course of sacred history, leaving a legacy that echoes through the ages. What you are about to discover about Solomon's descendants marks the beginning of the end for the greatest kingdom Israel had ever known, a kingdom shaped by love, power, and their far-reaching consequences. These are the final events that led to the fracturing of a kingdom, changing the destiny of the people of Israel forever. Despite the grandeur of Solomon's harem with its 1,000 women, the Bible records the birth of only one legitimate son, Rehoboam, born to Naamah the Ammonitess. But scholars believe the reality was far more complex, with dozens of princes and princesses born within the royal palace. Each birth was not just a personal or family event. It was a calculated political move, an act that solidified alliances with distant kingdoms and ensured the creation of multiple lines of succession within the palace. These children were not just heirs to Solomon's throne, but to the kingdoms and peoples their mothers represented. Each royal child grew up in a world entirely of their own, a secluded universe where their every need and desire was met, but also one where their royal lineage defined every moment of their lives. The education of these children was a matter of extreme importance, going far beyond learning the customs of Israel. Tutors from all over the world were brought in, each chosen for their expertise in a specific field. These tutors taught foreign languages, philosophies, and arts, ensuring that the royal children would be equipped to navigate the complexities of ruling not just Israel, but an empire that spanned multiple cultures. The competition among the mothers was fierce. Each knew that her child's education could determine their future. Mothers vied for the best tutors, knowing that knowledge was power, and power came with influence. Hebrew teachers who adhered to ancient methods worked tirelessly to impart the law of Moses to the royal offspring, ensuring that the traditions of Israel were preserved within the palace. Meanwhile, foreign masters introduced their own cultures, mythologies, and philosophies, with lessons drawn from the lands of Egypt, Phoenicia, Moab, and beyond. The palace became a melting pot of ideas and traditions, a crossroads of cultures that blended the ancient laws of Israel with the exotic wisdom of distant lands. Rehoboam, Solomon's only recorded legitimate heir, grew up torn between these two worlds. Raised in the traditions of Israel, with the Hebrew faith and laws as his foundation, he was also surrounded by the exotic cultures of his foreign aunts, stepmothers, and half-siblings. His life was a study in contrasts, caught between the pious teachings of his Hebrew tutors and the alluring, often seductive, influences of his foreign kin. These contrasts would later define his reign, with the duality of his upbringing pulling him in opposing directions. It was this internal struggle that ultimately led to the tragic downfall of his kingdom. The figure of Solomon as a father remained distant throughout Rehoboam's childhood. Solomon, burdened by the weight of ruling a nation and the complexities of managing a harem of 1,000 women, was rarely present in his children's lives. He delegated the responsibility of their upbringing to their mothers and the tutors they chose, leaving the children to be shaped by their mother's desires and ambitions. Each mother sought to raise her child in her own image, instilling in them the values of her culture, creating divisions and rivalries that were often veiled in silence but were no less dangerous. These silent factions within the palace spread throughout the royal family, creating an atmosphere of intrigue and competition as each mother hoped to secure her child's future on the throne. Solomon's reign, built on immense wisdom and power, was not without its dark side. The complex dynamics of his harem, with its multiple lines of succession, divided loyalties, and rival factions, would sow the seeds of division that led to the kingdom's dissolution. Rehoboam, caught between these conflicting worlds, was left with a fractured sense of identity. The future king of Israel was destined to inherit not just a kingdom, but a complex web of political, familial, and cultural legacies that would shape his reign in ways no one could have anticipated. Over time, Solomon's harem became more than just a center of political and sensual power. It became a spiritual battlefield. Each foreign wife brought with her not just beauty, influence, and diplomatic alliances, but the gods of her distant homeland. The daughter of Pharaoh, with her Egyptian grace and heritage, worshipped Isis and Osiris in private chambers adorned with intricate hieroglyphs, creating a space where the Egyptian gods were honored in sacred rituals. The Sidonian women, with their own customs and traditions, burned incense to Astarte, their sacred goddess of love and war, in hidden corners of the palace. The Moabite wives, under the light of the moon, performed secret rites dedicated to Chemosh, their god of war and sacrifice. At first, Solomon viewed these foreign cults with a diplomat's tolerance, seeing them as necessary moves to maintain peace and alliances. His great wisdom led him to view these practices as part of the delicate political tapestry he had woven through marriage and diplomacy. But over time, a different temptation emerged. Solomon, a man of deep intellect and boundless curiosity, found himself increasingly drawn to these foreign rituals, seduced not just by the love he held for his wives, but by the allure of the mysteries they offered. What began as passive observation soon became active participation. He built altars to these foreign gods on the hills surrounding Jerusalem, each one more extravagant than the last, as if to challenge the supremacy of the God of Israel. The impact of Solomon's actions was devastating, not just spiritually, but politically. For King Solomon set an example that the people could not ignore. When the populace saw their wise and revered king participating in these pagan practices, they too began to drift from the faith of their ancestors. The faithful, the prophets, and the priests cried out against this infidelity, warning of the consequences of abandoning the one true God. Yet their voices were drowned out by the sound of pagan drums and the sensuous laughter that echoed from the harem. The call to worship Yahweh seemed distant, even irrelevant, as the allure of foreign gods filled the air. In the heart of the kingdom of Israel, an invisible war was being waged, a war between loyalty to the God of Israel and the seduction of foreign religions. Even as the magnificent temple to Yahweh stood in its solemn glory in the center of Jerusalem, a rival spiritual world began to rise in the shadows. Small pagan shrines erected in honor of the gods of King Solomon's wives sprang up like weeds in the gardens of the royal palace. Where the sacred scent of incense from the temple once filled the air, it now mingled with the profane sensuality of secret rites performed behind closed doors. The spiritual unity of the kingdom was fracturing, torn between the worship of Yahweh and the temptation of foreign gods. Yet this spiritual crisis was only one aspect of the growing troubles Solomon faced. The cost of maintaining such an extravagant court, with its thousands of wives and their lavish lifestyles, was more than just an emotional or diplomatic strain. It was an immense economic burden. Each wife required a standard of living befitting her royal status. A retinue of servants, luxurious clothing, exquisite jewelry, and exotic foods from distant lands. The royal treasury, once overflowing with wealth from trade and tribute, began to dwindle. The kingdom that had once been awash in riches now found its coffers growing empty. To sustain the splendor of his court and meet the ever-increasing demands of his harem, Solomon resorted to raising taxes and imposing forced labor on his people. The once prosperous kingdom, a beacon of prosperity, now saw its people groaning under the weight of discontent. The golden prosperity that had once shone so brightly under Solomon's reign was now tarnished by the weight of oppression. The people who had once been so proud of their wise and glorious king began to see his reign in a different light. They no longer saw him as the wise king who brought peace and prosperity, but as a ruler whose insatiable appetite for grandeur had led the kingdom to spiritual and financial ruin. The wisdom that had once defined Solomon's reign, earning him fame and admiration throughout the ancient world, now seemed to falter under the weight of his choices. The harem, the very symbol of Solomon's wealth and influence, had become the source of the kingdom's unraveling. What had begun in wisdom and glory was now silently spiraling towards destruction. Solomon's unquestionable authority was being eroded by the very power he sought to hold. The seeds of division, both spiritual and economic, had been sown, and the consequences of Solomon's indulgence were now taking root in the kingdom he had worked so hard to build. As King Solomon aged, the intrigues within his harem began to intensify, swirling like a tempest through the golden columns and scented corridors of the palace. Younger wives, eager to secure a place in their husband's affections, competed fiercely for his attention, each hoping to elevate her status and influence. Meanwhile, the older wives who had once enjoyed his favor fought desperately to maintain their power, fearing that their positions were slipping away. Their struggle was not just personal but political, for the balance of power within the palace could shape the future of the kingdom itself. Rumors of conspiracies, hushed whispers of betrayal, spread through the palace like smoke, threatening to shatter the fragile peace Solomon had so carefully constructed over the years. Amid these worldly tensions, the legend of Solomon's mystical powers grew. Ancient texts speak of Solomon's fabled ring, a mystical artifact inscribed with the sacred name of God. This ring of immense power and mystery was said to grant its wearer command over the spirits and demons of the unseen world. According to ancient tradition, Solomon did not use this power for personal gain or hedonistic pleasure. Instead, he harnessed these forces to achieve monumental feats, works that would define his reign for centuries to come. The construction of the temple, the palace, and the city of Jerusalem, each of these marvels, crafted from massive stones and cedars from the distant forests of Lebanon, was believed to have been moved by supernatural forces summoned at the king's command. Every intricate detail of his kingdom, it was said, was touched by this divine power, making Solomon not just a king, but a ruler who bridged the gap between heaven and earth. But the power attributed to Solomon extended beyond the physical realm. Legend tells that demons themselves were subject to his will. Some were messengers, capable of traveling vast distances in the blink of an eye, while others were tasked with revealing the hidden secrets of the universe. These spirits shared their knowledge with the king, teaching him about the healing properties of plants, metals, and precious stones, secrets that helped Solomon become a master of alchemy and medicine. Ancient texts speak of the king's ability to see beneath the surface of things, to uncover the mysteries of creation. The knowledge Solomon accumulated through his command of these supernatural forces was so profound that it would be sought after by magicians, sages, and scholars for generations to come. These ancient texts, known as the Testament of Solomon, describe how the king interrogated the spirits, asking for their names, functions, and weaknesses. The esoteric wisdom contained within these texts was believed to be encoded in a series of symbols and mystical words, sought after by those who wished to attain a power like Solomon's. Yet even with all this supernatural power, Solomon remained deeply reverent towards God. Despite his ability to command the unseen forces, he knew that the power was not his own. It came from the Most High, the Creator of heaven and earth, who had granted him the wisdom and authority to rule. Solomon understood that his dominion over spirits and demons was a divine gift, a responsibility given to him for the benefit of his people. He used his power not to aggrandize himself or seek personal glory, but to fulfill the sacred mission of building God's temple and honoring the Creator who had given him the strength to achieve greatness. In the face of all this power and knowledge, Solomon's heart remained humble. He recognized that his wisdom, his authority, and even his mastery of the unseen world were merely tools in the hands of a greater power. His reverence for God never wavered, and he remained committed to using his gifts to honor his Creator, aware that his reign, however glorious, was temporary, a part of a divine plan that extended far beyond his own lifetime. In the end, the reign of King Solomon is a story of profound wisdom, unparalleled achievement, and tragic downfall. His power was unmatched not only as the ruler of a vast empire, but as a master of the unseen forces that shaped the world. Through his legendary ring, Solomon commanded spirits and demons, using their knowledge to build a kingdom that stood as a symbol of both divine favor and human ambition. His temple, a magnificent testament to Israel's devotion to God, was the crown jewel of his reign, a reflection of the wisdom and divine blessings that accompanied him. Yet, despite his spiritual and mystical prowess, Solomon's heart was not immune to the allure of worldly influences. His harem, once a political tool, became a battleground for power, desire, and ultimately, spiritual betrayal. His participation in the rituals of foreign gods, a practice that began as a diplomatic gesture, became a dangerous departure from the worship of the God of Israel. As his influence waned, so too did the unity of his kingdom. As the people followed their king's example and drifted from the faith of their ancestors, the children of Solomon, born of these diverse alliances, inherited not just his kingdom, but the divisions and complexities of his reign. Rehoboam, his son, would inherit a kingdom divided, fractured by the very forces of power, love, and desire that Solomon had once so skillfully wielded. The seeds of division had been sown, and the future of Israel would never be the same. The wisdom that had carried Solomon to the heights of glory was the same wisdom that led to his fall in his later years. The delicate balance between spiritual devotion and worldly power, between wisdom and indulgence, proved to be more fragile than even Solomon could have anticipated. The glory of his reign, as immense and awe-inspiring as it was, began to crumble under the weight of its own excesses. Yet, despite this decline, Solomon's legacy endures. His name, his wisdom, and the stories of his reign would live on in history, in sacred texts, and in the hearts of those who seek to understand the complexities of faith, power, and the human condition. His story serves as a reminder that even the greatest of kings must walk a careful line between divine wisdom and human frailty, because in the end, it is not the grandeur of a king's reign that defines their legacy, but the choices they make and the lessons those choices leave behind. The story of King Solomon is a profound reminder of the greatness and fragility of power, love, and wisdom. Though Solomon achieved monumental feats and built a mighty kingdom, the very power he wielded, coupled with his own human frailties, led to the eventual unraveling of the kingdom he worked so hard to build. The life of Solomon teaches us profound lessons about the balance between God-given wisdom and human weakness. His story is not just a tale of great achievements, but a cautionary tale of how even the most powerful rulers must remain vigilant and humble in their choices. The lesson from Solomon's journey is clear. Wisdom alone is not enough. It must be accompanied by humility, loyalty, and a commitment to the greater good. The seduction of power, luxury, and indulgence can easily lead us astray, no matter how wise we may be. Let Solomon's story inspire us to hold fast to our faith, to make discerning choices, and to remember that the actions we take today will shape the legacy we leave behind. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the life of Solomon. I truly appreciate your time, your attention, and the opportunity to share these timeless lessons with you. If you were inspired by Solomon's story and the lessons it holds, I encourage you to reflect on your own life. How can you use wisdom, faith, and humility to build a future filled with greatness and purpose? If this message resonated with you, please consider sharing it with others who might find inspiration here. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Let's spread these lessons far and wide. And if you feel moved to do so, please consider supporting this channel through a super thanks. Your generosity helps keep this light shining. May you be blessed with wisdom and understanding, and may your heart always seek truth and goodness. May your journey be filled with purpose, your steps guided by faith, and your life touched by the divine wisdom that Solomon both sought and shared. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you in the next message.